Sup you beautiful people. Hope you've had a fantastic day. Welcome back to another new episode of What If Deku Was the Sun Hero. Check out the author of the fanfiction, and give them some love, link is in the description. If you guys enjoy this what if, comment down below and let me know. And go ahead and check out other what ifs in the channel, after watching this video. Before we get into it though, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So let's start this video. The final match of the first round is here, Sports Festival fans. Mick exclaimed to the crowd. The cheer rose high for the final two competitors in the first round. From the left tunnel, it's the transforming hero to be, Toga Himiko. Watch me, Izuku. Toga waved towards Izuku in the stands with a bright smile on her face, as she made her way to the ring. Facing her from the right tunnel is the gravity-defying girl, Uraraka Chako. Mick introduced a Chako, and the brown-eyed girl with the perma-blush waved to the crowd with a friendly smile. Good luck, Chako-chan. Toga beamed at her friend as they stood across from each other. You too, Toga-chan. The Chako smiled before her face went super serious and intense. That switch is still so weird. Toga giggled in her own mind as she saw Chako go from easygoing girl to hardcore competitor in an instant. Are both competitors ready? Midnight questioned the two girls. Getting two nods in response, Midnight cracked her whip to begin the match. Begin. The Chako rushed forward with her hand ready to make contact. Toga grinned as she backstepped and then pivoted to the left on her heel. A Chako rushed past her, and Toga landed the first blow of the match with a punch to the upper back that sent her friend stumbling slightly. The yellow-eyed girl moved in to take advantage only to have to abort to avoid a wide swipe of a Chako's palm. Can you not try to send me into space, Chako-chan? Toga asked with a giggle while a Chako closed the distance between them. The two danced around each other, Toga dodging any contact with the Chako's hands to not let the zero-gravity quirk take effect on her. The Chako was willing to take a punch or kick here and there to try and get a hold of Toga and use her quirk. Their back and forth drew the eyes of experienced pros that focused on hand-to-hand combat. If one was close enough, they could hear the comments of several of these pro heroes. The blonde girl clearly has more experience when it comes to fighting. One pro mentioned as she watched the two girls fight. The brunette has tenacity, but she's solely focused on using her quirk on her opponent. She's not using any kicks or other tactics. A different hero noted with his hand on his chin. Ow. The Chako coughed as she took an elbow to the stomach when Toga dropped into a crouch to avoid her hands. The nimble teen hadn't wasted a single second before she drove her elbow into the gravity girl's vulnerable torso. Trying to take advantage of their positions, a Chako attempted to leap onto Toga, but the other girl rolled out of the way. Your quirk makes hand-to-hand really difficult, Chako-chan. Toga praised her classmate, even as the brunette rushed her again. So, I'm gonna have to think outside the box. With a sidestep, Toga was outside of a Chako's reach, and she punched the other girl in the face. Ooh, you heard that one. Mick commented as the crowd saw the solid connection of Toga's fist and a Chako's left cheek. A Chako was a fierce competitor, and she only stumbled a single step before planting her foot on the ground. I'm not done. The Chako whirled around with both hands out, ready to double palm strike Toga before the agile blonde could make any distance. She didn't expect to see Toga with her uniform top off, and her special sports bra, the only thing keeping her modesty. Toga wrapped the top around a Chako's outstretched palms. The garment glowed pink as a Chako's quirk affected it, but that didn't matter. Toga jerked a Chako forward by her tied-up hands and kneed the other girl in the stomach. The brunette had the wind knocked out of her, and she nearly heaved. The blood-loving girl finished her move by using her leg to trip a Chako, and forced the perma-blushing girl to the ring floor. With her hands trapped inside the uniform top and now trapped between her own body and the floor, a Chako's quirk was effectively sealed. Toga practically laid on a Chako's back as she wrapped her left arm around the brown-eyed girl's neck and applied pressure with her right arm, effectively putting a Chako in a chokehold. Give up, Chako-chan. I don't want to hurt you any more than this. Toga whispered to her friend. No, a Chako wheezed out as she struggled to draw breath. I can't. Uraraka is immobilized. Toga is the winner. Midnight made the call as she noticed a Chako going red in the face from lack of air. Toga immediately let go and moved off of a Chako. She helped the Chako sit up and unwrapped her uniform top from her friend's hands before putting it back on. The Chako breathed in and out slowly to get air back into her lungs. She looked saddened by her loss, and Toga was curious about her normally easygoing friend's reaction. Come on, Chako-chan, Toga smiled at the other girl as she held out her hand. Let's head to the waiting room. I'll listen to whatever has you so sad. It's nothing, Chako accepted her hand up, and the two walked off the ring together. Then I'll listen to nothing, Toga shrugged as she stuck by Chako's side. You don't have to. The Chako shook her head as they walked down the corridor together. I want to, Chako-chan, Toga assured her friend with a gentle smile. You're a good friend, Toga-chan. The Chako sniffled a bit as they entered the waiting room. Come here, Toga guided a Chako to a chair and sat next to her. She pulled the other girl into a hug and let her cry into her chest. Just let it all out, Chako. The yellow-eyed girl soothed as she ran her hand up and down Chaco's back. Toga hadn't had any female friends since elementary school when her quirk side effect first manifested. Coming to UA had given her all of her new friends, and she'd do anything to help them. Chaco hadn't been herself ever since the sports festival had been announced. The brunette played it off, pretending to be fine, but Toga saw that something was bothering Chaco the whole time. The normally easygoing girl had seemingly taken a massive weight onto her shoulders, and Toga would be here to help her unload that weight. When Chaco was ready, Toga would be right here to listen to her friend. In our first match of the semi-finals, we have the dark horse from General Studies that has proven his mettle over and over again, Shinso Hitachi. Mick, introduced as the teen in question, made his way into the ring. Shinso looked focused, his eyes sharp, as he walked into the ring. He knew who he was up against, and was hoping to use his quirk to end the match quickly. He had little to no chance against Midoriya in a straight-up fight. One hit from the immensely powerful teen and Shinso knew he'd be down for the count. His only option was to catch Midoriya with his brainwashing the instant the match started. Facing off against Shinso is the Sunlight Powerhouse Form Hero Course Class 1A, Midoriya Izuku. Mick announced, and Izuku walked out of his tunnel and towards the ring. I don't know what his quirk is. He didn't seem to use it on Mineta during their match. Mineta was on the same team as Shinso during the cavalry battle though, so he probably already knew. The only thing I have to go off of is Shinso's behavior in his match against Mineta. He likes to talk, which isn't how he seems to be normally. So either his quirk is based on his voice, or it's based on contact, and Mineta knew he was going to lose the instant Shinso touched him. Izuku ran through what knowledge he had about his opponent. Are both competitors ready? Midnight looked between the two boys. Yeah, Shinso exhaled as he looked Izuku dead in the eye. I'm ready, Izuku nodded to Midnight as he matched gazes with Shinso. Let the first match of the semi-finals begin. Midnight cracked her whip to the roar of the crowd. Hey. Shinso was going to try and get a response from Izuku quickly, but his words were cut off as Izuku instantly bulked up, and a massive wave of heat blasted across the ring. The heat was intense enough to make Shinso recoil and take a few steps back on instinct. I don't know whether his quirk is based on his voice or on contact, so the best option is to not give him a chance to use either. Izuku decided as he increased the heat output of his quirk. He forced Shinso out of the ring without responding to the purple-haired teen, while also making it impossible for the other boy to touch him. Damn, that's intense. Shinso grunted as the heat just continued to climb. He was already sweating heavily, and his mouth was starting to feel dry. Izuku started walking towards Shinso, keeping the heat to unbearable levels as he moved closer. Shinso didn't have any choice but to move away from the blistering heat. Step by step, Izuku forced his opponent backwards and towards a ring out. Shinso outright hissed in pain when he tried to stand his ground against the heat. His skin was turning red when he got too close to Izuku's heat wave. Midoriya is blasting out heat like a volcano. Shinso can't even get close. Mick commentated as everyone watched the dark horse getting forced backwards. When you don't know your opponent's quirk or how it works, it's best not to get too close. Aizawa noted as he watched the general studies student get pushed into a corner. Midoriya is simply using his quirk to keep Shinso at a distance, while also forcing him back as he advances. It's both an offensive and defensive tactic, and against such heat, there's not much you can do without having a quirk that is suited to dealing with it. Damn it, Shinso growled as he stared down the walking sun that was approaching him. It must be so nice to have been born with such a great quirk. All that power and flash, it's a perfect quirk for a pro hero. His dry mouth and throat was lowering the volume of his voice, and making it raspy. Some people have all the luck, don't they? Izuku's eyes didn't change. They still looked at Shinso the same way they had from the very beginning of the match. Izuku, for all his immense power, was still looking at Shinso as a legitimate opponent. The purple-eyed teen couldn't help but feel that he was at least being shown respect. The other teen knew he wasn't going to lose. Shinso could see it in Izuku's eyes. There wasn't a single doubt that Shinso would lose this match, and Izuku would move forward. With the way his skin was stinging from the already developed first-degree burns similar to a bad sunburn, Shinso knew he had no chance in this scenario. He'd been locked out of victory the second that Izuku had used his quirk. Shinso is out of bounds. Midnight declared, and Shinso looked down to see that his right foot had crossed just over the line on his last step backwards. Midoriya is the winner. The heat lessened noticeably as Izuku stopped using his quirk. The breeze began to quickly cool off the area as the two teens left the ring. Shinso was walking a little gingerly, trying not to make any unnecessary movements and aggravate his burns. He'd head to Recovery Girl and have them healed up with her quirk. That was looking like a daunting walk right now, but Shinso refused to be carted off by the medical robots. He'd accept his loss with dignity and leave the field under his own power, standing on his own 2 feet. Shinso, a guy from his class, called out to the tired-looking teen. That was awesome, man. You made it to the semi-finals. You showed everyone what the general studies kids can do. A brunette girl from their class cheered with a bright smile. I still lost. Shinso would have shaken his head if that wouldn't cause him a sharp pain from his full body burn. He looked up, ignoring the flaring pain in his neck from the motion, when he heard the applause begin. All of his classmates were clapping for him. The people in the crowd were cheering for him. He even saw multiple pros commenting on him, applauding his courage to stand against an opponent he knew he couldn't defeat. Shinso Hitachi finally heard the words he'd wanted to hear his whole life from the mouths of multiple pro heroes. He has the heart of a hero. A pro clapped as he looked down at the burned teen. He'd be a great hero. Another hero agreed with a cheer. It takes a real hero to face down the impossible without flinching. Keep trying, kid. A pro praised him with a smile on her lips. They're right, you know. Izuku spoke up from beside Shinso. You'll make a great hero someday. I look forward to seeing you in the hero course eventually. Maybe then you can tell me about your quirk. I'm sure it's amazing. It's nothing special, Shinso smiled at all the praise and encouragement. You beat me without even trying, but I appreciate the respect you showed me as an opponent. Don't lose to anyone else, otherwise I'll feel worse about my loss. With that, the general studies student walked off towards Recovery Girl's temporary office in the stadium. No worries, Shinso, Izuku called after the other boy. I'll win the whole thing, you have my word. The two parted ways and Izuku returned to the seating area for Class 1A. That was great, Izuku-kun. Toga cheered from her spot next to Chako as Izuku entered. This was echoed by the congratulations of the rest of the class, barring Bakugo and Momo, who were both already waiting in their own waiting rooms for their match to be announced. Thanks everyone. Izuku smiled as he sat next to Toga and took her hand in his. His girlfriend smiled warmly as she laid her head on his shoulder and waited for the next match to begin. For the second match of the semi-final round, we have the recommendation student and Our Lady of Creation, Yoirozu Momo. Nick hyped up the ground as Momo left her tunnel and made her way to the ring. Facing her is the guy with a temper just as explosive as his quirk Bakugo Katsuki. Bakugo scoffed as he walked out of his tunnel and stepped up onto the ring. Kick his ass, yeah Momo. Toga yelled loudly, and Momo felt her cheeks go pink at the exuberant cheer from her friend. Are you both ready? Midnight looked between Momo and Bakugo. Yes ma'am. Momo informed as she already had her sleeves rolled up and ready. Let's get this over with. Bakugo responded as he took his own stance. Alright, then you may begin. Midnight declared as she cracked her whip to begin the match. Die. Bakugo blitzed himself towards Momo with twin blasts from his hands. Predictable. Momo declared as she dodged rolled out of the way. A glow coming from her arms left behind several long capsules. Bakugo arrived just as the capsules burst and he vanished into a thick white cloud. The fuck is this shit? Bakugo hacked and coughed from within the cloud before stumbling out of it covered head to toe in whatever the cloud was made from. Fucking cold. He swiped at the cold chemical compound to get it off his body. It's similar to fire extinguisher foam, it's cold and prevents embers and sparks from becoming fires. Momo made a net from her stomach and threw it at Bakugo to trap him. Like hell. Bakugo dodged the thrown net with a growl. You think you can beat me just because you stopped my quirk for a little bit? He rushed the creation quirk user and went for a big right hook. The thud that rang out as his knuckles impacted the hastily formed metal shield made several people wince. Oh, that looked painful, Mick noted with a cringe. Fucking hell, Bakugo growled as he brought his hand back from the failed punch and dropped low to sweep Momo's legs out from under her. His adrenaline was kicking in and made it easier to put the pain out of his mind. Momo stumbled backwards from the leg sweep, but caught herself and prevented a fall. Bakugo bum-rushed her, and Momo was put on the defensive. Bakugo seemingly went feral as he kept on her so closely and attacked so frequently that Momo was having a hard time using her quirk. Hidden by her pant leg, a glow covered her lower legs, as dozens of ball bearings were created and scattered on the floor. The voluptuous teen jumped backwards just as the ball bearings scattered to avoid her own trap. Fuck. Bakugo slipped on the tiny, metal balls, and had to break his fall with his hands, including his injured right. Got you. Momo threw a thick blanket at Bakugo. It had taken most of her focus and a good amount of lipids to create. This particular blanket was completely fireproof though, and weighted on the edges to make an effective capture device in a pinch. Hell no. Bakugo roared as he brought both hands up and let loose a blast that stunned the audience. During all of his attacking and chasing of Momo to prevent her from using her quirk, Bakugo had ended up removing the large majority of Momo's extinguisher compound. His activity and his heightened body temperature from the adrenaline pouring into his system had made his sweat start to flow again. Ignoring the sharp bolt of pain he felt from forcing his quirk, Bakugo had detonated his sweat all at once. Momo cried out in shock and pain as the fireproof blanket was sent backwards along the blast wave. It actually protected her from the heat as it nearly wrapped around her completely. The explosion shook the area and carried the bundled up Momo several meters away. Bakugo gritted his teeth at the pain in his arms as the adrenaline high began to wear off. He'd won, but it undoubtedly screwed up his arms and hands in the process. Yoirozu is out of bounds, Midnight declared, even as she and Cementus made their way over to the blanket-covered girl to check on her. Bakugo wins. Well, that was a brutal ending. Mick lamented at the finish of the match. I was really rooting for Yoirozu. You're supposed to be impartial. Aizawa reminded his friend with a flat voice. Yeah, Momo. All of the girls in class wanna look down at the field and worry for their friend. I swear if he hurt Momo, I'm gonna hurt him. Toga growled as she leaned over the edge of the seating area. Yaozu, are you alright? Midnight questioned the teen as she and Cementus got the heavy, fireproof blanket off of the girl. My ears are ringing a bit and my head hurts, Momo responded as she sat up with some help from Midnight. I think I'm fine other than that. We'll have you see a recovery girl to make sure. Cementus advised as Midnight helped the girl to her feet. I'll go check on Bakugo, I'm fairly certain he's hurt himself in that match. Bakugo scoffed when Cementus approached him and asked about his injuries. The teacher wasn't taking no for an answer though. The blocky man gently poked Bakugo's right hand with one of his rectangular fingers, only for the blonde to hiss and recoil in pain. With a flat stare, Cementus put his hand on the teen's back and guided him towards the treatment area that was recovery girl's temporary office. I can get there by myself. Bakugo mumbled as he was taken to the treatment area. You have a broken right hand and most probably damage to both of your arms on top of that, Bakugo. Cementus shook his head at the aggressive teen. You'll be escorted just like Yaozu is being escorted by Midnight. You two really did a number on each other out there. Midnight informed the two teens. It was a good match though, and you should both be proud of your performance. Agreed, you both show much promise as future heroes. Cementus gave the two teens a smile. Thank you. Momo gave them a short nod and took the praise to heart. She just needed to keep practicing with her quirk and improving. She would take this loss and learn from it. From now on I'll have a backup plan ready, just in case my initial plan doesn't work out. The intelligent Ravenet decided as they approached recovery girl's office. I'll just keep winning until I'm number one. Bakugo's response was exactly what all three of them expected. More of you youngsters beating each other senseless, I see. I'll check the girl for a concussion first, and then any internal damage. Recovery girl shook her head at the violent nature of this year's sports festival. I'm already certain the explosive boy fractured his hand with that punch, so I'll start with that once I'm done checking the girl over. Midnight and Cementus left recovery girl to care for her new patients, while they returned to the field to continue with the semi-finals. Both teachers were left hoping that they wouldn't have any further injuries like those. The sports festival was a competition, and this year the finals were a tournament, but that didn't mean they wanted to see their students brutalize each other. Alright, it looks like our umpire is back, so we'll be moving on with the next match. Mick declared loudly to get the crowd's spirits up again. From the left tunnel, it's the high-speed teen with the naive nature, Iida Tenya. Mick introduced as Iida walked towards the ring. The bespectacled teen had a slight frown at Mick bringing up Nate tricking him in the last round. It seems a little unnecessary to mention that. Iida muttered as he stepped into the ring. From the right tunnel, it's the energetic acid girl with the sick moves, Ashido Mina. Mick announced as Mina walked out onto the field with a bright smile for the crowd. The pin cat happily waved as she made her way to the ring. Go Mina. Toga and Toru cheered loudly for their friend. Alright, are both competitors ready? Midnight questioned the two teens as they stood across from each other. Yep. Mina was bright and cheery, ready to fight and win again. Yes ma'am. Iida replied politely. Then you may begin. Midnight started the match with another sharp crack of her whip. Iida didn't say a word. His engines flared and he blitzed Mina in a blink. What the? Mina yelped as Iida blasted past her, and then she felt his hands on her shoulders. Hey wait. No can do, Ashido. Iida denied as he rocketed them both across the ring with his powerful legs and his quirk kicking into a higher gear. All the audience saw was a blur of blue and pink as Iida stopped suddenly, wincing at the strain on his legs. Mina went stumbling forward, formed a sudden stop, and took 2 steps across the line marking the ring. When she got her bearings back from the sudden acceleration and then short stop, she realized where she was. Ashido is out of bounds. Midnight pointed her whip towards Iida. Iida wins the match. No fair, Mina pouted at the match ending before she could even do anything. I didn't get to show my stuff at all. My apologies, Ashido. Iida gave his classmate a short bow. But I wanted to show my own prowess after my last match. The emphasis he put on the last word made it clear he was still not happy with what had happened. Yeah, I get it, Iida, no hard feelings. Mina waved his apology off with an understanding look. The two headed off the ring and made their way towards the Class 1A seating area. Do your best, Himiko-chan. Izuku smiled at his girlfriend as she stood up to head down for her match against Todoroki. I just need to get in close, right? Toga grinned to him before pulling him into a kiss right in front of their whole class. Several of the girls blushed, though Toru giggled and cooed about how cute the two were together. Kaminari mumbled something about lucky seeing the two together. Mineta looked far too intently at the couple. Envy was practically coloring his face as he gave the duo a desperate look. So jealous, Mineta ground out between clenched teeth. Try not being so blatantly perverse then. Jiro stated flatly, overhearing him with her quirk's heightened hearing. Mineta looked like someone had just shot an arrow through him. She's right, you're an outright creep. Toru agreed with Jiro, sending another metaphorical arrow into Mineta. Your lecherous behavior makes most of us want nothing to do with you. Momo spoke up and Mineta felt the third arrow pierce him. You're also a coward, barely tried to improve, and have no compunction about breaking rules to satisfy your lusts. Toga hammered in a few nails to go with the arrows. That puts you in the negatives when it comes to boyfriend material. She hugged Izuku gently before leaving the booth. They do have a point, bro. Kirishima gave Mineta a sympathetic look, but his tone was firm. You should definitely ease up on the perverted stuff a bit. Stop checking off boxes on the creepy bastard list, you dumb scrape. Bakugo's comment was as usual direct and brutal. Izuku ignored most of the comments going on around him as he focused solely on the ring. Todoroki was powerful, and Toga was a close combat type. There were a few win scenarios for his girlfriend, but Todoroki's raw power along with his willingness to use it in force put her at a distinct disadvantage. Do your best, Himiko-chan. Izuku murmured as he watched on. From the left tunnel comes the ice-cold recommendation student and one of the powerhouses of Class 1A. It's Todoroki Shoto. President Mick announced, and the crowd applauded and cheered, though with a notable drop from previous matches. It seemed no one had forgotten Todoroki's accident of almost dropping a glacier on the stands. The heterochromatic teen walked towards the ring with a focused look on his face. Everyone hoped he wouldn't be making the same mistake twice with his powerful quirk. From the right tunnel, it's the blonde that showed some great hand-to-hand skills last round, Toga Himiko. Mick exclaimed, while once more praising Toga's skills from her match against Achako. Haha. Toga giggled as she walked forward. Just need to keep to the left is all. Are both of you ready to begin? Midnight questioned as she looked between the two teenagers. Yes. Todoroki stated plainly, his eyes locked onto his opponent. Yep. Toga grinned as she surreptitiously made her first move ahead of the actual match. You may begin. Midnight started the match with the crack of her whip as the crowd cheered. I'll finish this quick. Todoroki was cut off as he jerked his head to the side to avoid the sneaker flying at his face. Toga dashed across the ring as Todoroki's eyes were focused on her shoe. With his instinctive reaction to the incoming object, his focus narrowed to the flying sneaker, and he lost sight of her for an instant. When he dodged her preemptive attack, Toga shimmied her opposite foot out of her other shoe and kicked it towards Todoroki again. Stop that. Todoroki wasted no time when the second sneaker came into his perception after dodging the first. Frost appeared from his breath, and the flying footwear was encased in a short pillar of ice that rose up from the floor. Gotcha. Toga grinned as Todoroki had done exactly what she thought he'd do, rely on his quirk. The hybrid quirk user didn't seem to realize that he'd cut off his own line of sight and once again lost track of Toga. But he was about to learn. Wow. Todoroki only had half an instant to react when Toga dashed around his ice pillar on his left side. He didn't even consider using the fire half of his quirk at all, and it cost him. Toga's leg came up in a low kick that slammed into Todoroki's left knee. The joint buckled from the force, and Toga quickly latched onto her classmate's left arm, and with a textbook hip toss, had him on the floor. She held onto his arm and wrenched it painfully behind his back into a hold. Todoroki grunted in pain as his arm popped before a punch slammed into the back of his head. Toga rushes Todoroki and succeeds in putting him on the floor. President Mick yelled loudly as the crowd roared and cheered at the unexpected result. Now she's raining down punches on his poor skull. Is he even conscious after that many blows? Her quirk wasn't applicable to the situation, but like a true hero, she figured out a way to deal with her opponent. Aizawa was giving praise in his own mostly flat way. Tricking the eye isn't too hard if you know how. Her hand-to-hand is also far better than most of her classmates. Forcing your opponent to play to your strengths is much more logical than fighting on their terms. Get off. Todoroki growled after what had to be the fifth or sixth punch to his head. He'd been stunned by the quick actions of Toga and ended up on the floor before he'd known it. The punches slamming into his head over and over again left him dazed, and Toga's right leg was pinning his right arm to the floor. Unfortunately for the blonde, any contact with Todoroki's right side was too much. Ice seemingly exploded from Todoroki and Toga's position. Great sheets of frost rose upwards from the ring, as the red and white-haired teen flexed his quirk to free himself. With a blast of cold air, the crystalline formation stopped growing and a light frosted mist hung in the air over the ring. Toga is unable to continue. Midnight called out after a moment for the mist to clear. The blonde girl was suspended partially inside one of the pillars of ice. She was conscious, but shivering heavily from the cold. Todoroki made it to his feet and cradled his abused head with his right hand. Todoroki advances to the next round. Before anyone else could speak, a green and blue blur slammed down onto the grass just outside the ring. Izuku rushed up the short steps and stood before the pillar of ice, trapping his girlfriend. A wave of heat was pumped directly into the ice as Izuku placed his hand on the construct. The ice began to lose cohesion as it heated up. Then it became like slush and Toga slid down into Izuku's outstretched arms. Hey Izuku-kun, Toga's shivering and chattering teeth made it hard for her to talk. You are amazing, Himiko-chan. Izuku praised her with a bright smile that she adored. He practically wrapped his girlfriend in warmth with his quirk as he carried her out of the ring in a classic bridal carry. You almost had him, even without your quirk. Ahahaha. Toga giggled as she snuggled into her boyfriend's warmth. She made a good showing against one of the favorites to win the sports festival, so she was happy with her placement. Sure, she'd have liked to knock Todoroki out and advance further, but being carried in Izuku's strong arms while he warmed her up was equally good in her eyes. Todoroki was sent to see recovery girl for the multiple blows he took the back of the head. With the sheets and pillars of ice covering the ring, it appeared the next match would have to be postponed for a bit. Toga was okay with this outcome as she was sitting in Izuku's lap being cuddled. All the while her friends either giggled with her or blushed at her in Izuku's closeness. After a few minutes though, the number 2 pro hero, Endeavor, simply walked out onto the field without being asked or technically even allowed. The red-haired flame-covered man stepped into the frozen ring. In an instant there was nothing but intense flames. The fire roared as Endeavor flared his quirk for just a few moments. When the flames wavered into nothing there wasn't a trace of moisture left on the ring. The pro hero simply turned and left the field the same way he'd entered without a word. Well, Present Mick seemed just as stunned as everyone else in the arena at the unexpected help of the flame hero. With some help from the number 2 pro hero, Endeavor, we will now resume the matches. Good luck, Izuku-kun. Toga kissed his lips in front of their class again. Thank you, Himiko-chan. Izuku smiled as their lips separated. He gently picked her up from his lap and placed her in the seat next to his. Standing up he noted that Bakugo had already left at some point. The green-eyed teen quickly left Class 1A's seating area and headed down towards the field. He only had a couple of minutes before Present Mick would start the next match. Starting our first match of the third round, we have the Sunman of Class 1A, Midoriya Izuku. Present Mick announced as Izuku walked out of his tunnel and towards the ring. Beat him down, Izuku-kun. Toga yelled out from the stands with a wicked grin on her face. There was no love lost between her and Bakugo. Facing him is the explosive powerhouse with an attitude, Bakugo Katsuki. Present Mick hollered as Bakugo made his way to the ring with a scowl. Are you boys ready? Midnight checked with both teens. Ready? Izuku nodded as he bulked up and heat began to pour off his body. Let's get this over with. Bakugo's hands crackled with small explosions. Begin. Midnight cracked her whip. It was over almost instantly. Whether this was a long time coming, after years of bad blood between the two boys, or perhaps Izuku was in a bad mood from seeing Toga frozen in the last match. It could even be the simple fact that Toga had told him to. But Izuku didn't waste any time with Bakugo. Die. Bakugo blasted forward towards the one he called Deku, since they were practically toddlers. He was met with silence and a fist to his face. Izuku had blurred forward and slammed his fist into Bakugo's face without hesitation. The physical strength, backed up by the blast of pyrokinetic flames screaming off Izuku's right arm like jet thrusters, rocked Bakugo's body. The ash-blonde sight faded to black, even as his body ragdolled through the air and landed on the grass outside the ring. It took 3 full seconds before anybody reacted. That was awesome, Izuku-kun. Toga laughed loudly as she cheered for her boyfriend. Bakugo is out of bounds, Midoriya is the winner. Midnight pointed her whip towards the already shrinking Izuku. The modern hero art history teacher seemed to still be processing the near-instant match. That has to be the fastest match we've ever seen at the sports festival. Present Mick was notably subdued as his voice came from the speakers in the arena. Midoriya home. I feel like this was a long time coming, Hisashi held Inko comfortingly. Izuku, Inko sniffled, she hated seeing her son upset in any way. But maybe this was needed for the two boys to put the past behind them. Bakugo home. You cocky little idiot, Bakugo Mitsuki sighed at her son's instant defeat. Maybe this would get her hot-headed punk to finally pull his head out of his own ass. Not like Aldera Junior High had done anything about his behavior. He's not going to be in a good mood when he gets home, Bakugo Miseru shook his head gently. I'll have a talk with him tonight. No, we'll have a talk with him. Mitsuki shook her head as she took her husband's hand. We both know he'll be fuming at being knocked out in one punch, but it's high time he learned that the world doesn't revolve around him and his quirk. UA First Year Sports Festival Stadium. Bakugo was carefully carted away by the medical robots towards Recovery Girl's temporary office. The red-eyed teen would wake up in a few minutes after treatment. His own quirk made him resistant to both shockwaves and heat, so he'd taken a bit less damage from Izuku's punch than most people would have. Not that he'd be happy with the results of the match regardless. Well, after that lightning-fast match, we'll move on to the second match of the third round. Present Mick tried to get the crowd over their shock and back into the excitement from earlier. That Midoriya boy shows promise, Endeavor muttered to himself as he waited for his son's next match. From the right tunnel once again, comes the icy powerhouse of Class 1A. It's Todoroki Shoto. Present Mick hadn't been expecting to call the team back out so soon. It wouldn't have been possible without Recovery Girl's quirk. The elderly woman truly was the backbone of UA High. Todoroki approached the ring to applause and cheers, though there was definitely an undercurrent of murmuring and questions if one listened closely. From the left tunnel, it's by the book speedster, Iida Tenya. Present Mick introduced as Iida walked towards the ring with a neutral and controlled expression. Alright, are you both ready to begin? Midnight checked with the two teens. Ready, ma'am? Iida nodded to their teacher. Yes. Todoroki kept his eyes on Iida. The recommended student was clearly focused on the match at hand. It seemed he'd had enough surprises during his matches after Toga's pummeling of his head. Begin. Midnight snapped her whip and Iida blitzed forward in a blur. Todoroki instantly froze the entire ring floor and Iida slipped on the ice. As the speedster fell from the loss of traction, the next wave of ice and frost barreled towards him. Thinking quickly, Iida fired his engines and did a mid-air backflip over the attack meant to encase him. Landing on the ice, he struggled to maintain his balance for a second, before dropping into a runner's starting position. The Cipro burst. Iida called out as blue flames burst from the exhaust pipes on the back of his legs. The second son of the Iida family disappeared and Todoroki was bum-rushed. Ice emerged behind where Todoroki used to be, along the edge of the ring, and the teens reappeared as Todoroki's back slammed into the hastily made wall. He coughed and wheezed from having the wind knocked out of him, but he'd stopped himself from being shoved out of bounds. Iida had no other moves to use so on the slick ice covering the ring floor, and Todoroki placed his right hand on Iida's shoulder. Frost covered the bespectacled teen rapidly and grew thicker and thicker to encase him. His engines guttered out and stalled as his reciprocal burst ended. In mere moments Iida was fully encased in ice except for his face. Iida is immobilized, Todoroki is the winner. Midnight declared as she saw the state of the two students. Todoroki slipped out of the frozen Iida's hold and placed his left hand on his classmate to start thawing him out. It was a gamble that almost paid off, as all were remarked of Iida's use of his trump card. Todoroki would have been the first one out of bounds if he had been a fraction of a second later in forming the ice wall behind his position. I didn't even see him move. That speed was insane. Present Mick hollered, and the crowd seemed to agree as cheers and applause rang out for the match. We'll take a short break before we proceed to the final match of the tournament. Izuku and Todoroki spent this break in their respective prep rooms. There was much talk among the spectators about the outcome of the upcoming match. The previous showing of Izuku being able to near instantly melt Todoroki's glacier earlier didn't inspire much confidence for the son of Endeavor. Do you think it'll just be a repeat of their match during our first combat class? Toga questioned the class as a whole. It is possible, Momo acknowledged the possibility. Midoriya's quirk practically nullifies Todoroki's. I'd put my money on Midoriya in this match. Sato commented with a short nod. Todoroki is strong, but Midoriya's quirk is like trying to fight the sun. Jiro mentioned thoughtfully. Yeah, it's kinda hard to come up with a strategy to beat that kind of heat. Kirishima agreed while wondering if he could do anything against it with his quirk. Well, we're about to find out. Mina pointed out as the speakers around the arena clicked back on. Are you ready? Sports festival fans present Mick cheered, and the crowd responded loudly. It's time for the final match of the tournament, and it's going to be a clash of the elements. Fire versus ice. Which one will come out on top? Izuku and Todoroki both walked out of their respective tunnels, as the crowd cheered and roared. The two powerhouse students stepped into the ring at the same time and stared each other down. The tension inside the ring began to increase instantly. Midoriya, are you ready? Midnight looked towards the freckled boy. Yes. Izuku nodded without taking his eyes off of Todoroki. Todoroki, are you ready? Midnight turned to face the heterochromatic teen. Yes. Todoroki also didn't look away from Izuku. Alright, both competitors are ready. Midnight declared as the crowd cheered in anticipation. Let the final match begin. She cracked her whip and the temperature went insane. The glacier was sent towards Izuku instantly, even as a massive ball of fire and heat exploded off the rapidly growing teen. The two forces collided and a shockwave was released from the thermal shock. The glacier fractured from the sudden temperature shift, while the flame and heat roared loudly as the temperature began to spike. I will defeat you, Todoroki declared as he pushed his quirk further. The ring itself began to crack as it froze over. The wave of frost continued off the ring and froze over the grass around it on Todoroki's side. You're welcome to try. Izuku's deeper voice replied as his body exuded an insane amount of heat and fire. Tell me if this seems familiar, Todoroki. Izuku held his right hand above his head, palm up as an intense fireball swirled to life just above his skin. Midday sun. The small ball of intense flames began to rapidly expand. It grew larger and larger as the heat it generated continued to climb. The sphere of flames was soon half the size of Todoroki's glacier, if it had still been there of course. The ice had long since melted, and the water evaporated away under the intense heat of the microsun. The temperature continued to climb even as Todoroki summoned another massive wave of ice. What is that? Present Mick cried out as everyone witnessed the formation of what appeared to be a miniature star in the ring. Even in the booth I'm starting to feel the heat. Your ice will be nothing but slush before it reaches me, Todoroki. Izuku stared hard at his fellow hybrid quirk user. To prove his point he walked through a wave of rapidly melting and evaporating slush. Your quirk isn't suited to temperatures like this. I refuse to lose to a quirk like his. Todoroki focused and the large ice construct was formed behind him. It was similar to a battering ram, and Izuku stalked closer towards Todoroki, even as he watched layer upon layer of ice freeze over each other to make the implement. The instant it was done, Todoroki launched a frigid battering ram towards Izuku. Did you forget that pyrokinesis is only part of my quirk? Izuku punched the flying battering ram with a good amount of his strength. The construct of ice, even layered as it was, shattered like spun glass into particulates of frost that near instantly evaporated. I'm winning this match, Todoroki, I made a promise. What went unsaid was that Izuku was still a little angry at what Todoroki had done to Toga in their match. The heat continued to increase as Izuku maintained his midday sun. People in the audience were sweating heavily, some outright panting as the air rippled in an intense heat haze. Many of the pro heroes had removed parts of their costumes to help them cool off. Not that it was doing much as the temperature continued to climb. Midnight and Cementus were sheltering under a concrete bunker that the concrete-wielding hero had made. The thick walls would keep them safe for a while at least. How can you be doing this? Todoroki panted as even with his ice, he was sweating savagely. Being directly under the midday sun was like an inferno bearing down on your body. No pyrokinetics should be capable of maintaining this. He blinked and wiped the sweat from his eyes as he noticed the cement ring liquefying under Izuku's feet as the other teen walked towards him. Every step turned the concrete into molten rock. The entire ring behind Izuku was already lost as he continued his approach. I told you before that this is the result of almost 10 years of hard work, Todoroki. Izuku answered his classmate as he continued his advance. Already he could see the other boy's skin turning red as it slowly began to burn even with his heat resistance. Consider I'll defeat you by force. I refuse to lose to a quirk like. Todoroki was cut off as Izuku blitzed forward and punched Todoroki in the face. The troubled half-cold, half-hot user felt his feet leave the ground. He experienced the weightlessness of reaching the apex of his launch via Izuku's fist, and then briefly felt gravity reassert its hold on him, as his vision faded out, and the heat began to lessen. He hit the grass outside of the ring unconscious as the midday sun quickly dwindled away to nothing. Whatever problems you have with fire quirks are going to hinder you in your hero career, Todoroki. Izuku looked down at the unconscious teen. You can't hate every fire quirk, especially not when you have one yourself. You won't be any kind of hero by rejecting half of yourself. Todoroki is unconscious and out of bounds. Midnight called out as she came out of the concrete bunker that she and Cementus had been sheltering under. The winner of the sports festival tournament is Midoriya Izuku. It took a second for the applause to start, but once it did there was no stopping it. Cheers, yells, and calls rang out for the verdette as he walked off the half-melted ring before he began to shrink back down. Both Midnight and Cementus stared at what was left of the ring after Izuku and Todoroki's match. The portion that wasn't melted was cracked and damaged from instantly freezing over. If this hadn't been the final match, Cementus would have needed to remake the entire ring before the next match would have been able to start. Midoriya's power is absolutely insane, isn't it? Midnight questioned rhetorically. Indeed it is. Cementus answered anyway with a shake of his blocky head. There you have it. Present Mick yelled loudly, making Aizawa grimace at the noise. Midoriya Izuku is this year's sports festival winner. Make some noise for the sun hero. If it was even possible, the crowd got louder in their cheering and applause for Izuku. None could match Toga screaming herself hoarse though. Midoriya home. Izuku. Inko was a fountain of happy tears as she watched her baby win the sports festival. You did it, Izu. That's my hero. Hisashi couldn't have been prouder of his son. He held Inko closely and provided her tissues as she happily bawled over their son's success. The Midoriya family was definitely celebrating tonight. Sports Festival Stadium. Shoto, Endeavor shook his head at his stubborn son. If you'd have practiced with your left side, your heat resistance would be much higher. You can't keep limiting yourself like this, a hero can't half do their job. He understood why his son resented his left side, why Shoto resented him. But he'd be damned if his son stepped into the world of heroics half-cocked and even less prepared. You'll see, Shoto, you'll see where resentment leads a person. With that, Endeavor turned away and headed for the exit. He had a couple of internship offers to fill out. Medals ceremony. Izuku stood on the first place platform staring out into a sea of cameras, as the media was allowed to get closer for the ceremony. On the second place platform was Todoroki, who looked conflicted and deep in thought. Standing on the third place platform was an oddly quiet Bakugo. Izuku was curious as to where Iida was though. The bespectacled boy should be standing beside Bakugo on the third place platform. Now for the medals. Midnight spoke loudly into her microphone. Presenting them this year is, you know who. I am, the familiar voice of the #1 hero, rang out from the top of the arena as he leapt towards the platforms. The excitement of the media spiked as the man landed on the ground before the top finishers of this year's first-year sports festival. Here, with the medals. All Might declared as he rose to his full height with his signature smile on his face. It's All Might. Midnight called out with a grin after seeing the blond man's entrance. The first years are really something this year. Even All Might came to watch. When Pro Hero noted as All Might walked up to the third place platform with the bronze medal. You have great strength, young Bakugo. All Might placed the bronze medal on the strangely quiet teen. But no hero can do everything alone. Learn from both success as well as defeat and you'll go far. Right? Bakugo stared at his bronze medal contemplatively. Young Todoroki, your matches were excellent. All Might praised the red and white-haired boy. But you'll never get to where you want to be if you reject who you are. Your quirk is yours, not anyone else's. Become the hero you wish to be with your quirk. He encouraged the teen quietly as Todoroki's eyes widened at the number one hero's words. The silver medal sat around his neck mostly ignored. Young Midoriya, you were quite the spectacle today. All Might smiled widely at the verdette while placing the gold medal around his neck. With the hard work you've clearly put into your quirk, I'm sure you'll go far in the hero world. The future is looking very bright. Thank you, All Might. Izuku was trying really hard not to either nerd out or panic with all of the cameras focused on him and All Might. If he used his quirk this wouldn't be a problem, but he had to get used to this without relying on his quirk's effect on his mental state. These are your winners. All Might declared to the crowd and a mass of media cameras. But hold on, everyone. Everyone here today has the potential to be standing up here. We all witnessed it. Competition. Encouragement. Pushing each other to climb higher and higher. The students of today will become the heroes of tomorrow. In that spirit, let's have one final cheer. The crowd was abuzz with energy as they all prepared to say the famous motto of UA High. Everyone say it with me. All Might shouted out as he raised his arm, his index finger pointing into the air. 1, 2, and plus ultra. The entire stadium roared and thundering applause rang out. I'm glad they drowned me out now. All Might hadn't been heard saying thank you for your hard work. Instead of plus ultra due to the sheer volume of the crowd. That would have been awkward. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed. If you want the next part of this video, like, subscribe and comment down below, and turn on the bell notification. And also check out other videos that I have created and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.